Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For this episode, my interview guest is a creative storyteller and author. As an author, she has written the fantasy books Tragedy in the Tides and Raven, Princess and a Warrior. Her name is Bin2 Kaba, and my interview with Bintou will follow the note-taking sounds. Bin2 Kaba, welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You describe yourself as a creative storyteller. What does that mean?
I've been writing stories since I was 9 years old. Now, I'm 20, so I write books, poetry. I'm learning how to write songs, and I know how to write film.
You've written a pair of fantasy novels. The first one's called Tragedy into the Tides. That might actually be the second one. But your other one's called Raven, Princess into Warrior. Without spoiling too much of each of your fantasy novels, what are they about?
Well, Tragedy in the Tides is the most recent one I have published. I published it last year. And it follows a character named Selena. She's a princess, and her mother drowned in the ocean, and Selena is just trying to figure out who is the one who caused her mother's death. And once she finds out, she goes on this revenge journey, and she seeks forgiveness at the end.
An interesting thing about your fantasy novels is that you chose the pen name Bin2 with the number 2 instead of letters representing the second syllable of your first name, Bin2 Kaba.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide to do that for your pen name?
My actual name is pronounced Bintou, Bintou. And when it comes to the Tou part, a lot of people mispronounce it. They usually say Bintou or Bintou. So I'm like, okay, let me just put BIN number 2 to make it easier for other people.
What motivated you to write fantasy novels?
Actually, my father, he tells me bedtime stories when I was a kid. And they were fantasy, and they were a little bit humorous as well. So, 8-year-old me just decided to write stories, and I just kept going as I got older.
Now, how long did it take you to write each of your fantasy novels?
It can take up to 3 to 4 months.
Were any of the characters in either of your fantasy novels influenced by or based on people you've met in real life?
Let's see. In real life, no. It's mainly inspired by movies I watched.
What are the easiest and hardest parts of writing works of fiction for you?
The most easiest part is just able to do anything. It just has to make sense because fantasies make believe. So I can write a dragon in this book because I can. It just has to make sense within the story. And the most hardest part, I'm pretty good at writing fantasy, so I don't know if there is a hardest part for me, but maybe just writer's block.
Yeah, writer's block's a common problem for a lot of authors, including me and quite a few other people I've interviewed for this podcast. So, my next question is, are both of your books independently, traditionally, or hybrid published, or did you use a different publishing method for one of your books than your other?
Both of them are independent.
Do you have any books that you're considering writing or are currently in the works? And if so, what are some ideas that you have for books that you will or may write in the future?
Well, the book that I'm currently working on and is also going to get published later this year is actually the prequel of Tragedy in the Tides. And it's basically the love story between Hawa and Pablo, who are like the rulers of the sea. There's not spoiling too much, but there's a war that's happening, forbidden romance between the two characters. So yeah.
An interesting thing about you, I don't remember, I might have interviewed one or two people for this podcast before who were spoken word poets, but you're a spoken word poet, and I don't get to interview spoken word poets too often. What are some poems that you've spoken, and where are some of the events that you've recited spoken word poetry? Where have they been held?
Well, actually, a few days ago, my school, they had like a spoken word night, so I performed there. And what else? Oh, I'm sorry, what was the other question?
What are some poems that you've spoken, and what are some common themes or topics that you like to speak poetry about?
Mainly spirituality and manifestation. Those two are my favorite topics to talk about when it comes to poetry. I also do social issues such as gang violence and gun violence. What else? Mental health, of course. Sometimes my poetry can be a little bit more rap. So, those are the themes I do. Success as well.
Uh, how do you remember uh, the poems that you speak as part of your spoken word poetry events?
I just write them down a lot, like with a notebook and a pencil, and I'll try to recite it to myself again and again and again.
Have you ever thought about writing a published book of your poetry, or is that something you've never really considered?
I never really considered that because like my poetry is on Spotify. So, I mean, I guess I could, but since my poetry is on Spotify, why do it in a book?
And you another thing that you've done is I don't know if you're doing this now or if it's something that you want to get into, but you've also written songs and film scripts. What are
Yeah.
some songs and film scripts that you've written or created, or if you haven't gotten around to that yet, what are some ideas for those that you have?
I haven't really got into songwriting in a while, so we have that. But for short films, I recently wrote a short film. It's not out yet, but it's like meeting my younger self and just talking to her.
I have one final question for this interview. You've cited spiritual alignment as fueling your creative expression. What is spiritual alignment for you, and how has it fueled your creative expression?
Spirituality, alignment is like aligning with your desires and goals in life and just aligning yourself with your purpose. Where I believe my purpose is to be a storyteller and also a music producer. Just honestly, just creativity in general. And it influenced my poetry by just writing themes about it. Just talking about finding my soul family, my chosen family, my soul tribe. That's what I meant to say. Um, Talking about repeating numbers and connections I see in everyday life.
Bintou, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You were an awesome guest to interview.
Thank you for having me.
I apologize for not uploading a ton of episodes this month as I've not felt well for much of this month. However, I will be uploading 24 or so episodes throughout the month of May, so follow the Apollo Papyrus podcast on your favorite podcasting platform to get notified of the latest episodes when they become available to listen to. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright 2025, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.